Park Saturday, live from the sports book here at Parks Casino in Bensalem. I'm your host, Jeff Skversky. Sitting aside me today is my producer, Julia Hoff. We have a lot to get to today. Former Eagles offensive lineman and NFL offensive lineman Barrett Brooks, who's the current NFL analyst at NBC Sports Philadelphia. He will join us momentarily to talk about the Eagles. They haven't quite made a splash yet. We're also going to check in with ESPN's Tim McManus, a great insider on the Birds. We're going to get into everything that has transpired and that has not transpired, the A.J. Brown situation, and much more. We're going to talk about the Birds. We're also going to check in with Carlin, who writes for the USA Today, covers the Sixers, a beat writer, as they get set for the Brooklyn Nets. And obviously the Sixers situation is a complete mess, and now they run the risk of not even making the playoffs, which is just awful what's going on with the Sixers right now. So we're going to check in with them. We're also going to hear from Dick Gerardi, a longtime Philadelphia sports writer. We're going to talk to him later in the show. A lot to get to today with the Eagles. And let's start there. The Eagles, they have not made a splash. They have been very quiet so far in free agency, very similar to last season. It's really been a carbon copy, and the Eagles are not expected to make a big splash. In fact, they have really done not much of anything. They have spent the second least guaranteed money in free agency in the first week of NFL free agency. Only $12.8 million guaranteed to start. Only one team has committed less guaranteed dollars, and that is the Minnesota Vikings. Don't have an issue with it. I mean, look, this Eagles team, as we know, should have been a Super Bowl contender last year, fell flat on their face with that talent in that room. But there's nobody at this point that the Eagles have lost that you say, all right, that's bad. That's a big blow. And look, Jalen Phillips, obviously the big one. Reed Blankenship leaving creates a hole at safety, but it is very early in this process. Howie Roseman has been very clear, general manager of the Eagles, that they're probably not going to make a big splash. I mean, could it come in the A.J. Brown trade? Could it come maybe in a Max Crosby deal? Who knows, right? You never know what's going to happen. And if there's a big name out there, the Eagles are in on all of it. Howie's made that clear over the years. But as far as free agency, what are you going to do here? I mean, Jalen Phillips, they wanted to bring him back, but at that number, at those numbers that Carolina gave him, you got to let him go. You can't match that. It's the same thing that they went through last year with Milton Williams and the Patriots, and what he got $100 million from New England. And he was great for New England. Same with Josh Sweat. Great for the Arizona Cardinals. You can't give those guys those types of numbers. You just can't. And so these fringe players, the above average players, the fringe players, you can't pay them top dollar on the free agent market. And the Eagles have identified certain guys that they're willing to pay. And remember, it's not just this year. They have to look beyond. And they restructured some contracts. They've given out some money to Jordan Davis and the punter. But when you look at what the Eagles have lost so far, is there anyone here that you're really going, this is a problem? Nakobe Dean, Jahan Dotson, Jalen Phillips, Joshua Uche, Azeez Ojulari, Sam Howell, Matt Pryor, Reed Blankenship. I mean, Reed was a really good player here. He was a really good player, and he came from nothing, right? He emerged into this great safety. But you can't pay him what the Texans gave him. And you can find other guys out there. And the Eagles have done that with Rick Woolen. They are finding other guys out there that they can bring in for less money that can do the job. Now, right now, this team has a hole at safety. We believe Andrew Makuba is going to have a good second season. He's going to be a good player. But this overall situation, I would not expect a big splash. And I'm okay with that because if you just bring it back, and everyone has talked about the Phillies running it back, if the Eagles essentially run it back with a few signings here and there and they draft well, I'm okay with it because this offense is going to go as far as Jalen Hurts is going to take them. And assuming A.J. Brown is here, which I still believe A.J. Brown will be a Philadelphia Eagle, and I think it is ridiculous to even consider trading him. Could it happen? May it happen? It may. But I just don't think it will happen. And I don't think it should happen because the Eagles would not be a better football team without A.J. Brown. The Eagles are a better football team with A.J. Brown. And I thought all the hype around the A.J. Brown was nonsense yesterday The Eagles are, fielding calls. And look, I get it. Teams are calling. The Patriots, the Rams checking in, fine. But this whole thing is that, hey, things are almost got the sense based on the reporting yesterday that the Patriots and the Rams, things are heating up. And then 3 hours later, no, there's no deal for A.J. Brown. It's not going to happen. It's baloney. It's just baloney. It's clickbait. I don't think if an A.J. Brown deal is going to happen, it's going to be till after June 1st because of the salary cap implications. But let's get the latest. Let's find out what's going on with NBC Sports Philadelphia analyst Barrett Brooks back on the program here on Bet Park Saturday. Barrett, what's happening? Barrett Brooks, so what is your take so far on the Philadelphia Eagles? We were just talking about it. They have guaranteed the second least money to start free agency. Should Eagles fans be concerned, or is this just pay par for the course right now?
It's par for the course. I mean, why would we be running around, and acting like the sky is falling when we still have one of the best rosters in the NFL? It didn't equate to being, going far in the playoffs, but it's still the core group that's there that won a Super Bowl 2 years ago. This team is still stacked. This team has some of the best talent in there. And just like you just said about AJ, it's even better if AJ stays here. So I'm on the same bandwagon. He's got to stay here. They've got to keep him here. And just from the salary cap, salary cap alone, he's got to be here. I'm one of the only guys that's saying, well, the only way we could trade him is if we trade him after June 1st. That's the only way. Because to leave $43 million of dead cap money there without the player, to me, is just nonsense. Now, if you trade him after June 1st, then they can spread that in half. And then, they could take, 20 here and then 20 next year. But as of right now, I think he should be here. And then the simple fact that he's a great player. Yes, he might cry and complain, but regardless, he's still one of the top receivers in the league if you allow him to go out there and play. Now, everybody has to get better. The offensive line has to get healthy and get back to playing the way they play, which will open up the offense even more. I'm listening to see what Munion's going to do with the offense, but I'm looking forward to seeing this season and having the same type of, giddiness that I had before last year's minicamp. I'm on board with them still being a championship type of team.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think that A.J. Brown gets moved, nor do I think they should move A.J. Brown. And you were on here a month ago saying that A.J. Brown's not going to get moved because of the salary cap, because of the fact that he makes his team better. Have you softened that stance? Have you changed your stance and your thought process on that at all at any point? Because I taped an interview with Tim McManus yesterday that we're going to show later in the program, and Tim thinks that they will trade A.J. Brown. And we've had other beat writers on this. E.J. Smith from PHOY Sports that believes that A.J. will get moved. Where are you at with the A.J. Brown situation? Because I still stand here today and go, I don't think it's going to happen, nor do I think it should happen. Where are you at on that?
I'm in the same camp. I don't think they should move him. Yes, he may be unhappy. There's been a lot of unhappy players in the league. I haven't been on a team where I haven't had an unhappy wide receiver, especially on a run-dominant team. That's just the nature of the beast. These guys are competitive. They want to be the greatest. And it's not necessarily him being selfish. I think it's more so his selfishness is the reason why he's as good as he is. He wants to be a Hall of Famer. In order for him to get a Hall of Famer, he's got to get the stats. And he hasn't gotten the stats the last 2 years because it's a run-dominant team. So I understand that. But you got to win. And this team is going to do whatever it takes to win. Now, they bring in Sean Mannion, the new offensive coordinator, which is going to open things up a little more, even though it's going to be a run-centric type of offense anyway. You still got to run to open up play action. The big thing is, can we get Jalen Hurts to be kind of careless? No, not careless, but be open to throwing over the middle. Be open to line up under center and running the offense the way it's supposed to run with play action. Play action will give big plays to those guys on the outside if he's good at going under center and accepting that and running this play action the way it's supposed to be run.
Everyone I have spoken to, they have all said this is not a Terrell Owens T.O. situation with McNabb here. It's not as contentious. It's not as crazy. And I don't think anything that A.J. Brown said last year, whether it was cryptic, whether it was passive-aggressive on his social media accounts or whether it was in person, I don't think anyone goes, A.J., you are wrong. I think everybody goes, A.J. was right the whole time. But I would say for that to be out there is entertaining for everything we do.
Yeah.
And it's great theater and it's great drama and everything else. And we in the media and TV and as fans, we want to hear this brutal honesty. But then you can't wish for the brutal honesty and then kill the guy for it, right? Like
Right. Right.
you can't have it both ways. So I applaud him for being open and honest and just telling everyone kind of what's going on. At the same time, if you go the other side of it, you go, it is, in my opinion, detrimental to the success of the football team to have your, have a captain, have a leader on this team being so outward with it. I don't think that helps the Eagles become better. Now, maybe in a weird chess-like move, it does for him to go, okay, I've tried to do it privately. It's not working. I'm going to do this for the sanctity of this team. I mean, we saw Brandon Graham last year kind of spill the beans on some drama with A.J.
Right.
Brown and Jalen Hurts. And look, say what you want. Maybe it fixed things and they go on to win a Super Bowl. And maybe in a weird way, I mean, Brandon's not a dumb guy. I think Brandon puts it out there and then to mend the fences, and it does. And they go on to win a Super Bowl. So I say all of that to say it's not as bad as the T.O. situation, and maybe it can be repaired with some slight tweaks, and everything is fine, and they bounce back just fine next year.
I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't care if it gets mended or not. At the end of the day, you got two alpha males that want to go out there and be successful. Jalen Hurts is going to make sure he's the best version of himself he can be. That means he's going to get in this playbook and try to get out there and run the best offense he can run. AJ will do the same thing. He won't have any more games like he had the last game we saw him in. I know you are what we last saw him, and that's kind of irritating him though. But I can almost guarantee if he has an Eagles jersey on next year on the field, you're going to get his best because he's too vain not to go out there and show everybody I'm still an elite player. And that's what they're saying. That's what he's hearing. So he's going to make sure that he goes out there and he'll be the best version of himself he's going to be. The ultimate goal is to go out there and win games. It's not one of those things where, I got to be your best friend for us to play good together. No, I don't need to be your best friend. I don't need to, go out with you after the game. I don't need to do any of that stuff. We just need to get together on Sunday and play the best game we can play. Now, I'm going to say this, though. It's a part of Jalen Hurts' maturation to make sure he gets him going. Because, you can look all around. You can listen to different people. Nobody is saying that he's not a good teammate. Not Jalen Hurts. Not any of the other players are saying AJ's a bad guy. It's just the way he opens up and the way he expresses himself is different. He wants to express himself through social media. The team doesn't want him to do that. But it still doesn't affect, the fact that if he's an Eagle, he's going to be an Eagle. He's going to give the best on the field because he doesn't want to have everybody saying, oh, he's just not good. He wants to be great, so he's going to show his greatness regardless of the situation.
So when you look at this team as we sit here today, A.J. Brown has not been traded. He is still part of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Right.
And we expect A.J., at least the two of us do, expect A.J. Brown to be here come September. When you look at this team as a whole right now, and it's very early in free agency, we haven't obviously had the NFL draft. What would you say the Eagles' biggest needs are right now? I mean, is it safety? Is it an edge rusher? Is it tight end? Like what? Is it receiver? What would you say the Eagles' biggest needs are right here as we sit here today?
Safety and another tight end. And right now, Dallas Goedert, he's on the team as we speak. But on Monday, they're trying to work out a deal. And it behooves us to go ahead and sign him back. If we don't sign him back, that's another $20 million that goes against the cap. So it's imperative that they do sign him back to get that number down because they pushed the can down the field with his contract for the last couple of years. And it's now, it's now coming to roost. If he's not on the squad, that's $20 million against the cap. So if he doesn't sign back, that means that means AJ Brown is going to be here regardless. He has to be here because the cap implications. So those two are kind of married together, and people don't understand that because of those cap implications. So he has to be here. So they need to sign a contract, get him going. The highest paid tight end right now is making $13 million. That's Isaiah Likely, the tight end that left the Ravens. He's down to get probably in between the, two of them, whether it's 11 million, 12 million, he's probably going to be right there. And I think that's fair market value for him. So they got to sign back. He wants to be in the best situation because you got a short amount of time to maximize your money making potential. his potential will definitely be better here in Philadelphia because him and Jalen have a great chemistry together. So it beholds both the team and the tight end to come back and let's go and run it again. We have enough talent to win the Super Bowl with the guys in our locker room as of right now. Even with the safety position being, as thin as it is, we got to find another veteran safety. I doubt if we can get it in the draft right now to come in and start and be opposite of Makuba. We need somebody there. I think that's why they signed back Michael Carter too. I think he's going to go from playing a slot to maybe then going and playing safety. And then we're going to bring in the new guy Jones from Washington, and he may come in and play a little bit backing up the slot on the outside.
Yeah, they lose Nakobe Dean and Jalen Phillips and Josh Uche and Reed Blankenship, to name a few on defense. Vic Fangio is going to have nobody to give his meatballs out to. This keeps up. I mean, you lost Milton Williams last year. You lost Josh Sweat last year. But I don't have an issue with these individual guys because they're getting money that I just don't think you can pay if you want to maintain the nucleus of this team. And so you're going to lose guys like Reed Blankenship and Nakobe Dean and Jalen Phillips. But in particular with Jalen Phillips, I know the Eagles wanted to bring him back. Obviously, the money just got too insane for the Eagles to do it, to match or even beat that Carolina offer. But how do you fill the void with Jalen Phillips now? Because he was very good coming over from Miami. I mean, that just really changed things for the Eagles' defensive line and really put a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to replace somebody with that type of talent. And that's why he's getting paid what he's getting paid. I kind of knew from the beginning we're not going to be able to sign him back. He was a number 3 free agent, and right now he's still the highest paid free agent that's on the board right now. So I knew he was going to get the money. He deserves the money. I don't know if it was that much, and there's no way the Eagles going to do it. In fact, I didn't think the Eagles would pass $25 million a year. I just think it would, that's out of their price range. I thought they would be around about $24 million a year for a contract they offered him, and he went out and got 120 for $30 million a year. So he got his money. But if you look at what we got, we just signed Arnold Ebiketie, something like that. I know he played it.
Ebiketie,
yes.
I think. Temple guy, Penn State and Temple guy.
Yep. So he's very serviceable, and we need guys like him. And he rushes the passer very, very well. He also drops his covers. He fits Vic Fangio's scheme very, very well. We have Hunt. BJ says he's going to come back. He's going to will it to come back. And then we have Nolan Smith. That's a good, healthy rotation right there. I think we need to get one more guy. Maybe we get him in the draft. Maybe we get him free agency. And I think we'll be tied up as far as pass rushers. There's not going to be a dominant guy that's going to have, probably double-digit sacks, but we'll generate enough pressure, especially with, those guys on the outside and the guys in the middle doing what they're going to do. Carter, all those guys, Morrow, Jomo, Davis, they'll do enough that we'll be able to put pressure on quarterbacks. And with this, we probably have the best secondary as far as cornerbacks in the NFL right now, bar none. With Coop, Mitchell, and now we just added, Woolen. I actually called a couple of his games when he was in college at UTSA. Okay. I knew he was a freak of nature, and I interviewed him a couple of times, when you go out there, pregame and talk to guys. He's looking me in his eye. He's every bit of 6'4", 205, 210 pounds. He's a big guy, ran a sub-3, a 4.28, 4.29, something like that in a 40-yard dash. He's like a little overly aggressive, but I really think that, he'll get to where, all right, this is, he doesn't want to hurt this team. He wants to make sure this team is right. This is a great locker room for him. It's a great pickup for the Eagles, and I was glad they did. I've been, yanking on this chain for the past 2 weeks, and they signed him, so it's like Howie was listening to me or something, but I mean, I thought he was a really, really good player coming out of college, and Clint Hurt was his defensive coordinator while he was in when he had his best season, his rookie year in Seattle. So now Clint's here. Maybe he'll, put a foot in his butt and say, hey, slow down a little bit, to be a little less aggressive. But they'll scheme him up. They'll put him in great positions. I have no doubt that Vic Fangio loves him, and he'll be ready to play come the season start.
Yeah, Rick Woolen seems like the perfect Howie Roseman free agent signing.
Prove it deal.
Like minimum risk and high reward. He's that type of guy.
Yep.
Obviously, the knock against him is obvious, the dumb penalties. And I believe I looked this up, and I believe he had the most taunting penalties in the NFL last season. But to me, that is a simple fix, right? And
yes.
Look, I mean, he was very close to costing Seattle a shot to go to the Super Bowl, let alone win
Exactly.
it, and with dumb penalties
Against the Rams.
Right. And so how do you, with a guy like that is very emotional, plays with passion, he talked about it at his press conference the other day. What do you say to a guy like that wears his emotions on his sleeve, that is so passionate on game day to keep him under control where you don't do anything dumb? Can something be said? Like, what happens in that situation? How do you control that?
The locker room police itself. It's not going to take a coach. It's not going to take anybody but those guys in our locker room and tell him. He gets to mouthing off like that. A guy like Zach Bond goes and grab him. Davis goes and grab him. Even Carter. Now, Jalen Carter say, chill out, man.
He has his own, but Jalen Carter has his own, problems. The whole spitting incident, and and that's why, like, I would be, and I think he's a freak of nature, but I would be hesitant to sign Jalen Carter to a monster mega deal, making him the highest paid, defensive tackle because of those incidents and things like that. But maybe I'm wrong.
No, some guys, some guys will get coached differently, and that's the way it is. When you're a generational talent like Carter is, he may be able to get away with a little more than the average guy on the team, and that comes with him being as great as he is. What he brings to the football field when he's in there is immeasurable. You can't put a price tag on it. And right now, you see he's out there working, getting them shoulders right. He'll be healthy this year. You're going to see a whole totally different Jalen Carter out there. His mindset is right there. In fact, I talked to him a couple of weeks ago. He is ready to roll. He has a lot to prove to a lot of people. He's going to shut the masses up. And he's one of those guys, too. He's a lightning bomb. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he can explode at any time. But it also gives him what he got on the field. It gives him that thing. Like most people, when they go about, their everyday life, some people can push past what average people won't do. You know what I'm saying? And that's what makes them great. They go above and beyond because the average person, their body will say stop. Well, their body doesn't say stop. They can keep going. But what comes with that, the good comes with the bad, and the bad comes with the good. What makes you laugh makes you cry. So I'm willing to take that. I'm willing to accept that. And I think they will too. He's going to get a massive deal. Massive.
Yeah, and look, you wonder if the guy wasn't dealing with double shoulder issues last year and had that shoulder's procedures, if he would have been more productive last year. And you do look and go, okay, Jordan Davis gets that monster deal and he gets it first. Obviously, you believe Jalen Carter is going to be next here. And just can those guys live up to those deals and be even better than they have been? We heard Jordan Davis talk about it the other day and he feels like, hey, I haven't hit my ceiling yet. But I want to go back to Riq Woolen for a second. You talk about that 6'4" frame. And assuming he fixes all the dumb penalties, which I think is an easy fix, right? It's not like he has an issue as far as talent. That's not the issue.
Right.
But opposing quarterbacks, I mean, he kind of mentioned it. Like, where are you going to throw? You have Cooper DeJean on the inside. You have Riq Woolen on the outside. And you have Quinyon Mitchell on the outside. Like, how much of an issue is that for opposing quarterbacks when you look at this Eagles defense? If all of a sudden you have Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter up front, okay, that you have to worry about, and then you can't throw. How much of a problem is that for opposing quarterbacks?
There will be offensive coordinators losing sleep a lot next year, simply because those guys can go out. Usually, it's hand in hand. The front four will make that your cornerbacks look really, really good because they're putting so much pressure on them. Well, this could be the opposite way because those cornerbacks are so good. He has nowhere to throw them to, which will help that defensive line out. And if those guys go like I think they're going to come, especially up the middle, and we forget how Smith plays when he's healthy, and then we have Hunt played at an all-star. He had 6 sacks, he had 3 interceptions. Come on now, when have you led the team in sacks and led the team in interceptions as a defensive lineman? I mean, come on now, we're talking about greatness if they play together, if they go out, and I believe Vic Fangio has just enough knowledge and they believe in him so much that he can make those players great again.
We're talking to NBC Sports Philadelphia NFL analyst Barrett Brooks. Barrett, as a former offensive lineman, when you look at the Eagles offensive line, obviously it was an issue last year. And it's the first time I can remember in decades, it feels like that, the Eagles' offensive line is an issue. Do you think them just getting healthy is good enough, or do the Eagles have to make some sort of move there to bolster that unit? Obviously, a lot of guys dealing with injuries, and they just were not in sync last year, which obviously had that domino effect.
Well, it's the offensive line. Health is the only issue. Once they come in healthy, and I believe they're going to truly come in healthy, they're going to get that stem cell in different places, whatever. If they can come in healthy, they'll get back to being a great offensive line. That offensive line was so bad that even Cam Jurgens made the Pro Bowl, but he was a lesser of a player. He didn't have his back was bothering him so much we couldn't even run a tush push anymore. He was getting beat across his face. He was getting, Saquon Barkley hit the backfield 3 or 4 times a game because he just couldn't do the things he needed to do because he wasn't healthy. Well, I believe he's going to be healthy now. I believe Landon Dickerson is going to be healthy. If those two come back and play at least, up to the capabilities they played the year before, this will be a monster offensive line again. And with this new system, the way they're going to play, they'll be even better because they don't have to drive guys off the ball like they did before. Usually they ran duels, and try to drag off the ball. With this new system, the way they run zone, they're going to block spaces instead of guys. And if you come in their space, they're going to block you. And it really it creates holes of separation just because guys are getting displaced as opposed to getting driven off the ball. Now you have, one of the best running backs in the league getting back to form. Now you're going to have Saquon Barkley, one step cut getting downfield. There's going to be a lot of big runs with this new offense simply because it's more so displacing defensive linemen as opposed to driving them off the ball. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I know a little bit about the system because I played in the system. I went to Denver for just camp, and I learned how they run it. And they run it by going to spaces and have the running back get to a spot and take it up the field, one step cut. It's a really dynamic way of playing it. Usually you run this offense with an offensive line that's inferior, but this is a great offensive line running this offense. They can run an offense with bad offensive line because they would just, move guys out the way. These guys will be even better because they are big enough and great blockers up front. So health, if that's not an issue, this will be the best offensive line in the NFL again.
That's interesting. That's a great point, and an insight that I can't see with my own eyes. Obviously, you played the game at a high level. You know this. So what is the domino effect that it can have on the quarterback, Jalen Hurts, and you mentioned a little bit in there, Saquon Barkley? How much pressure does it take off, in a sense, of Jalen, where Jalen maybe can play a little more free?
Because when you're running zone like that, and now the defensive line is looking like, oh, they're going to run the ball again. That sets up play action. So when you set up play action, those linebackers know that Saquon is a dynamic player. So as soon as it looks like they're running the ball, that automatically is going to bring them up into the line of scrimmage. They're going to run to stop the run. What does that do? It creates zones that'll be wide open because there'll be linebackers that are, coming in to try to stop the run. So it'll make the reads very, very defined for Jalen Hurts. It's not going to be a lot of reading because these guys are going to be running wide open because the threat of the run is opening up the middle of the field. So now when you run these crossing routes and these deep digs and stuff, you'll see the separation simply because linebackers won't be there, safeties will be picking in the backfield, and it creates so much havoc on the defense that they won't know where they're coming or going. Watch what I tell you. That play action is going to be so good. And imagine running boot, and they run boot, and Jalen goes down, hands it off, but then he spins around and boots outside. He can run it, or he could pass the ball to the tight end. This would be a great, great game plan they have. The new tight end they got months from Jacksonville. He's a dominant run blocker. This offense will be even better this year.
Yeah, I've seen video of him, and you're like, wow, like
he's a tackle.
Yeah, and I think that essentially fits into Sean Mannion's style there.
Exactly.
Obviously, bringing in an offensive coordinator that has not called plays, that doesn't have that experience per se, is a risk. Do you think the Eagles are more likely, as we sit here today, to be a team that's going to make another Super Bowl run, or do you think it's more likely this team would take a step backwards? What is your assessment of just the overall picture right now? And I know it's early, it's mid-March.
Well, I'm looking at it like this. The core group is there. This team has a lot of great players on it from the offensive side of the ball and these new emerging stars on the defensive side of the ball. So when I look at it, I get excited. Now, offensively, it's going to take about, 3 or 4 weeks to get it going and running the way it's supposed to run. But the basics are there. Running the ball will, open things up. And once you have, everybody looking at the run, that made the passing goes open. And we still have our quarterback. So anytime you have your quarterback, a good offensive line, and a good defense, it leads to greatness. I won a Super Bowl with the same formula. Ben Roethlisberger was just Ben Roethlisberger. He wasn't Big Ben then. And we were able to play that game the way we did in that Super Bowl because we ran the ball consistently, opened up play action, and he was able to get defined reads and get down the field to Hines Ward. At the time, Hines Ward was slow as pond water, but he was able to get open out there simply because the threat of the run would open up the pass, man. So they have a great core, and with that great core, I believe it's going to be a really good season going into the year. They may not win as many games as they did Super Bowl year. They may have, 10 or 11 games going into the playoffs, but then, when you can run the ball consistently, it opens up a lot for the playoffs.
Yeah, and obviously patience may be key here because assuming they don't play in the preseason, which unless Nick Sirianni changes course,
right?
And the philosophy is that they won't play in the preseason, so you almost maybe
they won't.
Right, and so then you need to almost have some patience for them to kind of just work through some things with this new look offense, and then you wonder, okay, is that going?
We're in Philly though. We don't have that.
Right.
We don't have that.
You could be 17-0, 17-0, and people are going to complain about something, right? And so what I would say is, and I've asked some other people this, is there a scenario where Nick Sirianni could be on the hot seat next year if they don't get off to a great start and things don't pan out the way that many people expect, including yourself?
I really do think he's going to be on the hot seat because he changed everything up. He let a lot of not just players go, but coaches go. So it's win or bust. He's going to have to. That's the only thing about the league.
What's your definition of win? Well, what's your definition? I mean, obviously winning a Super Bowl, only one team does it, but what is your definition of win?
I think, NFC playoff game is probably the least of what he has to do going into next season. They have to be that successful going into the postseason. They have got to make it to the championship game at least, or he's going to be on the hot seat.
Wow. All right. Well, NBC Sports Philadelphia's Barrett Brooks, we appreciate you joining us once again here on Bet Park Saturday. Great insight. And again, Barrett, a big believer that A.J. Brown will be here with the Eagles next season. And I'm with you, Barrett. We appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate you, bro.
Great seeing you, Barrett Brooks. Great insight there, as always, from the former NFL offensive lineman. And he talked about it in there about the Dallas Goedert situation. The fact that the Eagles have pushed back Goddard's contract void date not once but twice in a week to Monday now, to me, is a clear signal that they're planning on keeping him. At least they're trying to keep him in Philadelphia, and the teams don't go that out of their way. But, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni talked about it at the NFL Combine. They want to keep Dallas Goedert, and his production last season was tremendous. 60 catches, nearly 600 yards, 11 touchdowns last season. The Eagles know how valuable he is, and they didn't address tight end in the draft last year. The draft had some really good tight ends. They did not address it, so I would think that Dallas Goedert will be back. They will find a way. Monday's obviously the new deadline. If the contract actually voids, the Eagles would take a $20.5 million dead cap hit on the salary cap. So negotiating an extension here would help the team manage the cap and keep Goedert in Philadelphia, which I think would be a great thing. And obviously the A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert situation is very, very, very connected right now. All right, let's get into the Sixers. We're going to go back to the Eagles and talk more about the Eagles and everything that has transpired with Jordan Davis and Reek Woolen. But I really want to get into the Sixers situation, which is just a complete, utter mess. The Sixers face the Brooklyn Nets coming up in about 25 minutes. Somehow, some way, the Sixers, I believe, are 9.5-point favorites right now. Is that right? Yes. Sixers are 9.5-point favorites. How is that even possible? The Sixers are in a terrible situation. They have essentially nobody playing. Are they the unluckiest team ever? I mean, Joel Embiid is going to miss his 7th straight game today with that oblique strain when the Sixers host the Nets. Embiid, really is their only hope going forward here with the season just going down the drain. It really is. they haven't made it out of the second round of the playoffs in 25 years. It sounds crazy. It is crazy because they tanked to rebuild, and this just hasn't worked. And we've really talked about just the fact that we just need to wipe our hands of this, right? I mean, just wipe our hands of what's going on. So let's talk about the Sixers. Let's bring in Sixers beat writer Carlin he's a Sixers editor for Sixers Wire for USA Today from the Xfinity Mobile Arena. What's happening, Kai?
Hey, what's going on, Jeff? How are you?
Great, man. Great having you on from the Sixers game today. Obviously, the Sixers situation, I'm at a point where I just go, it's just exhausting. And, I've mentioned maybe it's just time I believe it is time for them to trade Joel Embiid this offseason and just move on with Maxey and with Edgecombe. What I would ask you right now, what is the mood of the team when you look at who's out today? I mean, the list is just ridiculous. Joel Embiid's out, Paul George is out, Tyrese Maxey out, Kelly Oubre out, and I believe Andre Drummond out as well. Am I missing anybody here? I mean,
you're missing Jabari Walker as well. Jabari Walker's out today too.
So other than Edgecombe, who is playing today?
Well, I mean, listen, they're going to start Quentin Grimes. I might have to play center today. I might have to. But no, Adem Bona is going to be back in the lineup today. He missed Thursday's loss in Detroit. So, I mean, at least you get Bona back. To your point, though, about Joel, I mean, it's just, Nick pregame said that he got an encore workout yesterday. It was an individual workout. He's not doing anything with the team yet. So the fact that he's not doing anything with the team yet kind of says to me, he's at least another week away. Because then he still has to build up conditioning. He still has to build up, getting his shots up, getting his rhythm back. So honestly, Jeff, today's March 14th. We might not see him until after this upcoming road trip.
Right. And what is there? 16 games left. Yeah, 16 games left, including today. They're sitting at 35 and 31, ninth in the Eastern Conference. I just go like another season is going down the drain. And I'm not trying to be negative and create this negative narrative, but it is just the truth that it just feels like enough's enough. And they tried this with Joel. It's been going on, 12, 13 years, whatever it's been. Enough is enough. It's not working. And so let's say Joel comes back in a week. Paul George, is going to come back with 10 games to go. Maxey, we don't know. And so then let's say, you have this team together for the final week of the regular season? This team hasn't played enough together. It's not like they've played years and years together that all of a sudden you go into the playoffs, if you even make the playoffs, they don't know how to play together. And then, they get whacked out in the first round again. And you just go, what a waste. And guys get hurt. It's nobody's fault. But, I mean, this is just ridiculous, right? And so where do you think the mentality is from the Sixers front office down to the locker room about where this team stands and where things are with this team as a whole?
At this moment in time, they still believe that they have a shot to go deep into the playoffs. They still believe it.
But is that fool's gold? Because I hear that, and I used to hear Brett Brown talk about, hey, deliver a healthy Joel Embiid to the playoffs. So I'm going, you still have to know how to play together and how to close out games and not have Joel Embiid turn the ball over with 10 seconds to go and flop. And who's your killer? You don't have that Jimmy Butler. Who's your killer to take that shot? I just go you can't have a team just kind of piecemealing it together and then start playing in the playoffs and expect everything to go well.
No, agreed. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, especially because when Paul George does come back, there's going to be 10 games left, but they do have a back-to-back, 2 of them. So really, he's only going to play in maybe 8 of the 10 games, and that's that's not including a potential injury or potential rest or not playing in the season finale, things like that. So I think there's too many variants or too many issues that really pop up with this team right now, because I think at this moment in time, you still don't know who you are. You don't have an identity. We're here at today's game 67, and we don't know what the Philadelphia 76ers are. And I think that's such a big issue at this stage of the season when all of the other contenders and all the other teams that are going to the playoffs, they know who they are, but this team doesn't right now.
Right. And my whole point with all of this really is that it's been the same story every year. And forget how I feel and forget how the fan base feels or whatever about this team and about the whole situation. I mean, look, I didn't blame Brett Brown. I didn't blame Doc Rivers and or Brian Colangelo now or Nick. It's not their fault. And some guys may lose their jobs over this, which I think is unfair. But like at the end of the day, like what are the Sixers supposed to do? Because this is just not working. And I contest that you just build around obviously Edgecombe and Maxey. That is the future here, and just wipe your hands of it and move on. And I don't know if the fan base would be that just upset, because I think, look, the Sixers tried this. It's just not working.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you're at this point where just like, I think this offseason, you have to at least maybe kick the tires on a Joel Embiid trade or a Paul George trade. George still has 2 years left on his contract. He's supposed to make, off the top of my head, I think he's supposed to make 60 million next year. So it's going to be
That's
just,
it?
I know, right? It's going to be really hard to really trade these guys, though. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. Like, sure, they can at least kick the tires and they can at least maybe, see what they can get for these guys. But it's really hard to really see a team be like, oh, yeah, give us Paul George, give us Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid in 2029 is going to make $71 million. And it's really hard to like really commit that type of money from another team's perspective for a guy who you don't know if he's going to be there when it matters most.
Yeah, and I don't feel like we ever know. And every year it's been something. And then, okay, now he's dealing with the oblique strain, which has nothing to do with the knee and the ankle and the foot. And it's
Right.
always something. And, early on in his career, there were lots of, I won't say character issues, but he never really seemed to have that work ethic that we're seeing from Edgecombe and Maxey, that you see from those LeBrons and Kobe's and Michael Jordans and those elite players. You just have never heard that work ethic. In fact, you've heard the opposite about the weight issues and, like the practice issues and things like that. And you go, this is your face of your franchise for a decade. And he's been unlucky with the injuries. Obviously, we knew that going in when they drafted him. But it never has felt that, okay, this guy is 100% locked in, and almost having that maniac mentality as far as work ethic that you get from LeBron James, that you would get from Kobe or Michael Jordan, or even that you see from Maxey and Edgecombe. I mean, Maxey told a story, I believe it was before the start of this year, that during the summer he reached out to the entire team about doing these workouts at 6 a.m. And really the only one that showed up was Edgecombe. Now, in all fairness, okay, was Joel in town and things like that. So I don't want to take that out of context. But to me, it does ring true that you don't hear these stories about Embiid. You hear these stories about Edgecombe and you hear them about Maxey. And that has been a concern of mine.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the biggest issue. I mean, we've heard it obviously during the Brett Brown era. We heard it during the Doc Rivers era. We're even hearing it a little bit even now with Nick. Now, granted, I think Joel deserves a lot of credit for kind of hearing the criticisms, and he has done a really good job of, hiring like a personal chef, making sure he's eating the right things. Now, rather than cookies and cream milkshakes that he would kind of say that he would guzzle down in the beginning of his career. And like all the different things that different steps he has taken to make sure that he is in the best position. The unfortunate part is, if you're the Sixers, you have committed all of this money to a guy whose body continues to betray him. And you're at a point where even if you wanted to just build around Tyrese and VJ, which at this point is probably the best move to rock with, you can't do it because you've committed so much money to him. And as I was saying earlier, you can't trade these guys. Nobody's going to want Paul George or Joel Embiid's contract unless you attach a million picks to it. So the Sixers are unfortunately in this position where even next year, we might be having the same conversation a year from now. Is Joel going to be healthy? Is Paul George going to be healthy? These guys have chemistry. It's going to be the same thing next year, probably.
As Paul George, would you consider him a bust as far as signings? Obviously, he's been a tremendous NBA player in his career and has had this great career. But as far as a Philadelphia 76er, I mean, he's dealt with injuries and then now the whole league suspension. Would you label it a bust or would you not go that far?
I think 100% has got to be a bust. I mean, especially when you consider the fact you gave him the 4th year, which, you remember, that's why the Clippers didn't want him. The Clippers did not want to give him the 4th year. They offered him 3. So now the Sixers stepped in and say, hey, we're going to give you that 4th year. You come here and play with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey and help get us over the hump. Where, like you mentioned, they haven't been past round 2 since 2001. So it's at a point where you felt comfortable doing that, and now we're 2 years into it, 2 years left, and when he does return, I think he's played 27 games this year, Jeff. When he comes back, he can play a maximum of 37, which he's not going to hit 37.
Right. You
He
mentioned
played,
that back to back. Right.
yeah. So he's played 41 last year. So in 2 years, out of 164 possible games, you're getting maybe 36, or excuse me, 76 games out of him, which is just that's a bust, Jeff. That's like the definition of one.
So let's talk out the rest of this season here with obviously so much up in the air that you're juggling with the unknowns with Maxey and George, and obviously Joel Embiid. Do you think the Sixers team makes the playoffs?
Uh, that is a good question. I think right now I would have to say no,
Wow.
especially when they're already the number 9 seed right now, right? You got swept by the Atlanta Hawks. If you play the Hawks in the play-in tournament, I'm not sure if you get past them. The Charlotte Hornets have been playing phenomenal basketball since I think New Year's Day. The Hornets have been, I think, the second best team in the league since New Year's Day. They've been the best offensive team, best defensive team. If you're matched up with Charlotte, there's no guarantee that you beat the Hornets. And then maybe if they get matched up with Toronto, the Raptors are now in the play-in. The Toronto has kind of fallen off. I'm not a big believer in the Raptors. So if the Sixers match up with Toronto at any point, then maybe that's your path to get into the playoffs. But then once you get in, Jeff, you got to play the Detroit Pistons, who have 2 psychopaths at center, and Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart, and a phenomenal all-star guard in Cade Cunningham. Duren's an all-star too, by the way. And then you've also got, and if you don't get Detroit, guess what? You got the Boston Celtics, who have owned
Right.
you for years. So
Right. And you think about the Celtics. I mean, they've been sitting pretty, and that's basically without Jason Tatum the majority of the season, right? And you go, Tatum is a killer, right? And you go, yeah. I mean, look, could the Pistons? They still have a young nucleus, kind of like the Sixers did years ago, that was on the rise, and so I'm not a huge believer in that the Pistons are, going to make an NBA Finals run. Could it happen? Sure. But to me, the most dangerous team to me is always the Celtics. And I would also put the Knicks in that conversation, because the Knicks, to me, with Brunson, like, they have a killer, and and they haven't been as successful this year as they have been in the past. But those teams are killers, and the
yeah,
Sixers have struggled with those teams.
yeah, and I mean, they're 0-3 against Detroit. You're 2-2 against Boston, but your 2 wins came in October and November, when the Celtics really didn't know who they were just yet. You went 2-2 with the Knicks, where again your 2 wins came in December, when the Knicks were still coming off that NBA Cup nonsense that the NBA is trying to push and things like that. So I mean, it was a weird time for the Knicks, but Detroit has kicked their behinds every time. Oh, Cleveland too. You got swept by the Cavs,
Right.
and they have James Harden now. So I think the Sixers right now, they are not in the class of any of the teams I just mentioned.
And so how does Nick Nurse continue on here with this team when you don't know what lineups day to day here, and trying to push this team, at least getting them into the playoffs, to see if he can make some magical, unexpected run? I mean, what do you get the sense from Nick Nurse and his frustration over the overall situation?
I need, or excuse me, I don't need anything, but I give Nick a lot of credit. Nick has done a phenomenal job of just kind of keeping these guys together. It kind of reminds me of last year, when he kind of had he was rocking with G leaguers and 10-day guys and 2-ways, and he was able to get those guys to at least be competitive. It's the same situation right now. The issue is right now they're in the play-in tournament, and there's still a chance for them to move up. They really are right there. They're only, I think 2 games out, or 2.5 games out of the number 6 seed. So there is a chance. So Nurse has gotten these guys to play hard, but it all comes down to whether Joel Embiid and Paul George and Tyrese Maxey can come back in time. Like that, and there's no guarantee on any of those 3, especially
Right.
Joel.
Right. Yeah, it really has been just a punch to the gut, really, in the last, I don't know, I want to say month, whenever that Paul George news broke on that Saturday. Is it been a month? I don't even know what it's been. But it's really just been guys have been just dropping like flies. And, all year you hold your breath all the time with Joel Embiid. That's going on for a decade. But then Maxey and the Paul George situation is just going, oh my. This team, I'm sitting here in a casino, Parks Casino. I'm like, they're the unluckiest team in the world. I mean, they have all this talent and they can just not figure it out.
Yeah, and then again, though, it's just like this is kind of what you committed to, right? You committed all the money to Joel, who, as I mentioned earlier, his body continues to betray him no matter what he does. And Paul George is another guy. I know he played 72 games his last year with the Clippers, and he was all NBA, he was all-star, he was shiny, right? But his 4 other years with the Clippers, 31 games, 40 games, 56 games, 47 games. Like he is another guy that deals with a lot of injuries. And it's unfortunate because, as you mentioned, Jeff, he's a hell of a player, 9-time All-Star, borderline Hall of Famer. But when you can't be on the floor, the Sixers are getting nothing out of that investment.
Yeah, well, thank goodness, though, for VJ Edgecombe. He's been absolutely tremendous and continues to get better. And for him to have kind of a mentor in Tyrese Maxey, I think the world of Edgecombe. I think he's just going to be a stud.
Yeah, I think Edgecombe to me is he's mature beyond his years. Just even having like conversations with him in the locker room, even with the microphones off, just talking to him. I mean, you can just tell he's got a great head on his shoulders. He loves the game of basketball. He has a thirst to want to get better. He has like a maniacal work ethic is how I would describe it. He has this ability to just, like, no matter what the situation is, no matter how maybe rough of a shooting day he's having, he's going to come up big in the fourth quarter. We've seen him do it all season long. And if you're the Sixers, he's the guy that you have to kind of like look to. And at this stage, especially when you consider what we just talked about with Joel and Paul and Tyrese, like VJ's kind of your guy now to kind of, propel things forward.
All right. Well, Carlin from the Sixers Wire for USA Today. We appreciate it getting us set for Sixers Brooklyn Nets coming up at the top of the hour. And again, they are without essentially half the roster. No Joel Embiid, no Paul George, no Tyrese Maxey, no Kelly Oubre, Andre Drummond. He is out. And I know I'm missing people, but you get the point.
Jabari Walker.
You get the point. So Kai is going to play center today for the Sixers against the Nets.
I got to go suit up.
All right. Well, Kai, we appreciate it. Great insight on the Sixers. We appreciate you joining us here on Bet Park Saturday.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it so much.
All right. Kai Carlin, great insight there. He does not paint a pretty picture for the Sixers, and I agree with him that this season has just become an absolute meltdown. They haven't made it out of the second round of the playoffs in 25 years. As crazy as that sounds, it's the truth. And I got to be honest, I'm with him. I don't know if they make the playoffs. In fact, I don't think they make the playoffs now, which is really sad because they sit here today at 35-31, ninth in the Eastern Conference. And look, they're favorites to beat the Nets by 9.5 points today. I don't know how in the world. I would think you would bet heavy to take the Nets there. But in any event, they are free-falling, 2.5 games up on 10th place Charlotte. I mean, this season should not be here, but here we are, and we're treading water, a boatload of injuries, a suspension with Paul George, and the air has just been sucked out of the building there. And look, Joel Embiid, we don't know when he's coming back. We still don't know. He was reevaluated yesterday, and, he's still not practicing with the team, so you have to wonder, is this team able to figure it out? And without Maxey, who's really their best player, he's almost impossible to replace. And the guys talked about that. And here are the Sixers. Let's listen to this sound here with the Sixers talking about just how in the world do you replace Tyrese Maxey, who is out 3 weeks, at least 3 weeks. It's just about impossible. Here are the Sixers on trying to find a way to replace Tyrese Maxey starting this week.
You can't replace Tyrese Maxey. It's one of one. You can't replace him at all. But we know he would want us to go out there and just hoop. And that's, he's going to support regardless. If him being injured or not, he's going to support. He's going to be the same person. He's not going to be a cancer or nothing like that. He's not going to have his head down whining about anything. We're all grateful for life. We're all grateful to just be in the NBA. And now we have a chance to make a playoff push. I mean, obviously, he's been our best player all year. It hurts for him to go down. Obviously, it hurts for him to go down, but now everyone else have to step up. He knows next man up now. Everyone have to step up, and if we just try to have a good run, the 3 weeks with him being out, and with him when he gets back or whenever, I mean whatever the timeline is, we just want him to play again before the season's over, And like I said, I'm just hoping a speedy recovery for both him and Joel. So yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's a huge blow for him, right? He's having an all NBA season. Just hoping it heals, really, really quick, and he gets back to where it doesn't bother him at all, right? That's all I can say. I mean, he's obviously played tremendous, and obviously puts us in a bind with some of the other guys out too. But just hopefully these 2-3 weeks will whiz by, and he'll be ready to go.
It sucks, but hopefully we got other guys coming back soon. But it definitely sucks. When he went down in Atlanta, like I broke a finger before, so I kind of seen his reaction. He was just kind of stunned. So I kind of felt like it was a little bad, but I don't know. We got to stay ready. Everybody got to stay ready. And like I said, obviously it sucks to lose a guy like him. But, I mean, we got other guys on the team that can make plays, and we just got to keep getting better together and find a way to win games.
Hey, man, we got to get them. We got to just get gutsy wins like we did tonight. It's not going to be pretty. It's not, we got to figure it out quickly. And, just try our best to hold it down until he comes back and, the guys get back. But it's the tale of the seasons, right? Like every year is kind of something. We face adversity at inopportune times, and we got to just figure out a way to just make it happen. But praying for him and praying for his speedy recovery. But he'll be back, and he'll be back to himself in no time.
Right, but the question becomes, yes, Tyrese Maxey's going to be back, and you hope to get Joel Embiid back, and then Paul George, and they're going to have maybe a week to all play together and figure it out, coming off injuries, and there's going to be conditioning issues and things like that, and that becomes the big concern of here we are again, and it's rinse and repeat, and I do really feel bad for the fan base because you've invested so much into this, and you go back to the Sam Hinkie situation and them tanking to get Embiid and Simmons and Okafor and everyone else in between, and Markelle Fultz, and nothing works out. And Joel has been, your best player, and Joel's been a great, great regular season player. And when healthy, he's a freak of nature. But here we are, and nothing has changed. It's been rinse and repeat. And, Brett Brown took the fall for some of this, and so did Doc Rivers. It's not their fault. It's not their fault. Ben Simmons is not Doc Rivers' fault. It's not Brett Brown's fault. I mean, what are you going to do, right? I mean, Ben Simmons is out of the league. And so you look at this whole overall picture, it's just been exhausting. And I just don't get the sense that it's going to change. Not with this nucleus where you just have to just cut bait with Joel Embiid. And we heard Carlin talk about it. It's going to be a big challenge with those numbers, and the same with Paul George with those numbers that those guys are locked up for. But you have to build the team around Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe. And I'm sure Daryl Morey is a smart guy. He's not to blame for any of this. I mean, he drafted Maxey. He brought in Edgecombe. What are you going to do? I mean, but you got to move on from Joel and just let it go. And maybe you're not going to get back a great return. But you just got to move on. I mean, because this is detrimental. I also think to the psyche of the other players. I mean, Maxey kind of hit on it a little bit as well. So I do have that concern of man, oh man, it's a problem. It's a big problem. Maxey talked about it earlier this year, is that I'm playing 3 or 4 different roles and not knowing who's in and out of the lineup. That has an effect on a team to all come together and go into the playoffs where you have years of experience. I mean, the Celtics, for the most part, that core's had years of experience. They've won championships. The New York Knicks have had years, essentially, that core around Jalen Brunson playing together. Same with the Cavs and everything else. even the Pistons, and the Pistons are a young team. Could I see the Pistons flaking out? Sure, 100%. But I do have an issue with the way the Sixers are headed. I think you just have to just cut bait and call it a day. All right, anyway, it is Bet Park Saturday from the Sportsbook here at Parks Casino. I'm your host, Jeff Skversky, sitting alongside my producer, Julia Hoff. Here at Bet Parks, it is championship week, and it continues for men's college basketball conference championships with games starting, of course, today at 11:30 this morning until late this evening. Big East, Big 12, ACC, Atlantic 10 tournament, the SEC and the American Conference among the conference championships playing today. Penn, plus 2.5, playing Harvard, St. Joe's, plus 6.5, playing VCU in the Atlantic 10 tournament. It is time to play. Make your downtime fun time. The only online casino and sportsbook app that I recommend, where there's always another way to win. Right now, new casino users get 250 bonus spins on the hot online slot game Gold Trio Leprechaun's Luck, plus up to $1,000 bonus back in the first 24 hours. You can play real casino games for real money and bet all, of course, on your favorite sports right here on your phone. All you need is your phone to be able to do it. You can bet the pro games, the college games, hockey, MMA, golf, soccer, and much more. And, of course, all of the traditional casino games from slots to blackjack, craps, roulette, you name it, are on there as well. The Bet Parks online casino and sportsbook app. Check it out, where there's always another way to win. You must be 21 years old in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Michigan, and Maryland. New users only. TCs apply. See the site for details. The casino bonus must be wagered. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. So we've had Barrett Brooks on. We have talked to him about everything going on with the Eagles. Let's get into the Phillies situation now and what's going on with the Phils and the WBC World Baseball Classic. Bryce Harper, he has not looked good in spring training or the World Baseball Classic. I mean, Bryce, he's hitting $150, only 150 so far in the WBC, 0 for 5, 2 strikeouts against Canada. I don't put a lot of stock in the spring training stats and things that go on this time of the year, especially for a guy like Bryce. Would it be great to see Bryce Harper lighting it up in the World Baseball Classic or in Grapefruit League play when he was in Camp Clearwater? 100%. It certainly makes you feel better, especially everything that transpired this offseason and what happened in the playoffs and, you know, everything going on, whether he's still elite and things like that. But it is really a put up or shut up year for Bryce Harper. And he says he doesn't have to be motivated, and he's not going to be extra motivated by the Dave Dombrowski comments, whether they were taken out of context or not. They were said, and I think what Dave said was true. But Bryce Harper needs to have a monster year if this Phillies team is going to make a World Series run. You can't have another October with Harper and Turner and Schwarber just completely just going silent that time of the year. And you'd like to think, okay, the competition in the World Baseball Classic is better, and the World Baseball Classic is great in theory, best players in the world representing their countries and big names, and it's, you know, better competition than spring training. But at the end of the day, is anyone watching this? Does anyone really care? I mean, guys like Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber were like, okay, this is great playing for your country and wearing USA across your chest, and it means a lot as Americans. And I don't doubt that at all. But the reality is people in Philadelphia, I just don't think care about the World Baseball Classic. And I would say in America overall, you look at these games, you look at the games that are in Houston, the stands have been, they've been empty. Tickets are, I think, were going for like $7. Sure, if USA were to play, Japan or play Puerto Rico and they're the go to the finals. Yeah, that's going to get a big TV rating on Fox. But I'm not buying this World Baseball Classic. It feels like it's forced. It feels like it's the in-season tournament with the NBA in a weird way. It's not the Olympics. And I would even tell you the Olympics I can't get into because a lot of these athletes, you don't know who they are. And so Bryce hinted on this over the last week. And he said, look, no disrespect to the World Baseball Classic or anything, but everyone knows when the Olympics are on. So it is interesting to me to hear Bryce say that. Listen to these comments from Bryce Harper talking about the World Baseball Classic and how much he wants to bring the Olympics and bring baseball back into the Olympics. Listen to Bryce.
Yeah, there's nothing like it. Really excited to put the nation's color on my chest again. Did it as an amateur. Super excited to do it again, and looking forward to playing with the guys that we're playing with. And I think atmosphere should be pretty dang good, especially being here in the States.
Given the excitement over the hockey team in the Olympics, would you guys like to see baseball back in the Olympics? It's been a while.
Yeah, I've been fighting for LA 28 for a long time. I think my whole career I've been trying to get something started or something coming up. Obviously the WBC has been great, but it's not the Olympics, right? That's no disrespect to the WBC or anything, but everybody knows that when the Olympics are on, everybody's watching. Don't matter what sport it is. It could be the most random sport, and it's got all the fans watching it. So I'm hoping LA 28 happens. I'm hoping the next CBA agreement something can happen where teams and players can come to an agreement on taking that 2-week break, especially it being in our home country. It'd be great for baseball. You talk about growing the game, and being able to grow it at the highest level would help out tremendously.
Some players who wanted to compete in this tournament who had issues getting insurance or were just told by their team owners that they would prefer for them not to participate. It seems like that could also potentially be an issue with the Olympics, even if there is a break in the schedule for that. What do you guys think is the solution to that conflict going forward for this tournament and potentially the Olympics?
Yeah. Go ahead. All right. Yeah, I think the big thing is obviously I understand it. Like from ownership standpoint, I totally get it. For Scoots to come out here and do what he does and pitch us, one game, I have the utmost respect for our pitchers that come in and do it, because obviously everybody knows that he's going to get absolutely broken off next year and he's going to make more money than anybody as a starting pitcher. So for him to be able to do that and do that for us is something that I respect out of him. And so as players and owners, we just have to come to an agreement that works for everybody, what works for everybody. Understanding that you can get hurt playing during the regular season, you can get hurt playing during the Olympics. And I think if you look at it in a hockey way, then you see that. Sidney Crosby got hurt and, he wasn't able to play the gold medal game. And his team knows that as he's going into that tournament. So you kind of just have to understand that it's real. It could happen, but there's nothing like representing your country. Yeah, I think it's the best part of playing USA baseball as a young kid. We went to 2 different countries. Went to Veracruz, Mexico, and then Barquisimeto, Venezuela. So seeing 2 different cultures, the way they kind of run the ship, it was really cool from an American kid going out there and watching. They had clackers in the on top of the dugout, and the bottles and everything, and the bells and the whistles and all that. So it was definitely a different environment. A lot of fun playing in that, and I think a lot of USA guys will tell you it's some of the best experiences we ever had. I remember I was playing with Manny Machado, and we walked down the street. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and got a ham and cheese croissant from one of the vendors. Got in trouble for that, but it was one of the best nights, just being able to go out and see different cultures and understand where people come from and all that kind of stuff. So pretty incredible.
Ham and cheese croissant. That sounds good right about now. I'm getting kind of hungry. It is lunchtime. I am getting a little bit hungry. And by the way, I am hungry to see Bryce Harper have a monster season. I think we all are. And again, I don't put a lot of stock in what goes on this time of the year and the fact that he's hitting only 150 in the World Baseball Classic, but he hasn't looked good. Are you going to remember any of this in a month from now if he starts tearing it up? Of course not. And obviously, you don't need him to be a superstar right now, but you do in October and you do this season. And I do think he will be motivated by that not elite and the whole elite thing that went down this offseason. But it would help. It would help if Bryce Harper was tearing it up right now in the World Baseball Classic. And maybe things will change this week, but I really need a big season from Bryce Harper. All right, let's talk to Dick Gerardi, longtime sports writer here in Philadelphia, spent decades and decades covering college basketball. Dick Gerardi, let's welcome him into Bet Park Saturday live from the Sportsbook here at Parks Casino. What's happening, Dick?
Jeff, how are you, buddy?
Great to see you. So I am not traditionally a huge college basketball fan. Now, I grew up with, great Temple basketball. That obviously has gone away. We've seen Villanova win the national championship, twice in 4 years, and that was wonderful. But the way things stand today in the landscape of college basketball, and you spent decades and decades covering college basketball in the NCAA tournament, correct me if I'm wrong, it just feels way different. Lots of rivalries are gone. What do you think the mood around college basketball is right now?
Yeah, the whole sport has changed. Now, look, at the top of the sport, I mean, this is one of the great freshman classes ever. Like, all these guys their names will be called in the NBA draft. But, look, locally, Jeff, since Jay Wright retired, it's been a real problem. There hasn't been a Philadelphia team in the NCAA tournament in 3 years. Good news is there'll be at least one and possibly three, depending on what happens with St. Joe's. They're in the semifinals of the Atlantic 10 today. Penn is in the Final Four of the Ivy League. Villanova's going to the tournament, even though they lost to the Big East in the quarterfinals. They'll be in.
Yeah, that was ugly against Georgetown.
Yeah, that was ugly. That was not a good performance from a team that's had a pretty good year. Frankly, in a down Big East, they're not in the same. They're not really compared to the top two. UConn and St. John's are way better than Villanova, but Villanova is way better than the rest of the league, and that's going to be enough to get them a spot. Their issue, Jeff, is they're probably going to be in that 8-9 range, which could put them in the first round and say like Spartanburg, South Carolina, Greenville, Spartanburg, where if they would happen to win, they would be playing Duke in the next round. But you know what? Villanova, just get in the tournament, which they're in. If you could win a game, I think it would be a highly successful season.
Yeah, obviously Villanova, what Kevin Willard has done there has been great. And obviously what has gone on at St. Joe's has been great. But listen, I'm a Temple alum, and I was there for Chaney taking the team, to the Elite Eight twice in 4 years during my time as a student there, and going back to when I was a kid with those great runs that they had with Aaron McKee and Eddie Jones and things like that. But the Temple thing is gone, and it's sad to me that Temple, who has this amazing practice facility where NBA teams come and work out, and they have this great on-campus arena. They're just dead in the water to me. I mean, I look at what's going on with Temple. They're just dead in the water. When you look at the college basketball landscape in Philadelphia, the Big Five, it just feels like it's just dead. Or am I just so out of it?
No, you're not wrong, Jeff. It's just completely different than it was even 5 years ago because the whole world has changed. Now, Temple specifically, what happened there is they're chasing this football money. They've been chasing it forever. They're not really getting any of it, but they don't want to give up on it. From the moment they left the Atlantic 10, they've been in a basketball wasteland.
There's no rivalries. It's awful.
They're in this league with teams from Texas and Florida and Oklahoma. There's no juice. It wasn't like UMass or GW or St. Joe's coming in McGonigal Hall, then the Liacouras Center. And look, they have a terrific young coach, and I'm biased because I've known Adam Fisher since he was the head student manager at Penn State. He's a great guy. He's a Bucks County guy. You have the right guy. The problem is Fran Dunphy couldn't do it at the end, and he's a legend around here. And it wasn't because he forgot how to coach. It's because of the league they're in. Same thing happened to Aaron McKee. And I don't know that there's really a solution as long as they want to keep playing football. My recommendation would be do what UConn did in basketball. Remember, they were in the American for a while in basketball because they wanted to play football. Well, they said, forget that. Let's go back to the Big East. Well, what have they done in the Big East, Jeff? Win 2 national titles in the last 3 years.
Right.
Temple back at the 10 for basketball, but they're going to have to decide to give up this football dream, which is really a dream. It's just not reality.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother thing. And I'm like, they play at the link, and it's depressing. Like, football's depressing there, and you're going, what? You're playing at the link, like it's empty. And so, and maybe there's some rules why they can't, but I've always been like, go play at the Union Stadium, go play at Franklin Field. But at least it'll be packed. Like, at least like the people that do go, it'll make it feel better. But if I'm a recruit that's coming in going, okay, I could start and be a stud at Temple, and I get brought into the link, I mean, it's empty. It's empty. Unless there's a Notre Dame or a Penn State opponent, it's completely empty. And to your point, you're chasing that money. And then you go, there is really no money. And so nowadays, and I remember talking to Aaron McKee about this years ago, and Aaron's like, look, back in the day, there was people just, you would go and recruit kids and say, you're going to be on TV and you have these facilities. And that's all out the window. And now it's really just about how much can you pay me? And I don't blame these kids. If you can make that money, I don't blame them. But I just don't see a path where Temple that doesn't have a ton of money is all of a sudden going to be able to pay and bring in those, even if you have studs coming out of high school, these blue chip players out of high school. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I don't either. Look, I thought Casey Killer did a really good job in his first season with Temple football. I thought they were extremely competitive. And to your point, Penn State is coming in September this year, so there will be a sellout at the Link for a Temple football game, but it's going to be 90% Penn State fans. So, yeah, I just think it's one of those things. They've just been thinking this is going to work forever. It never has. And now that the game has changed so much in the last 2 or 3 years, where you're right, Jeff, it's no longer about, hey, how many games am I going to play on TV? What's our facility like? It's about how much you're going to pay me. That's what it is. And schools like Temple just don't have that kind of budget to be paying for top players, frankly, in either men's basketball or football, which are the only two revenue producing sports in college athletics. And that's where the big money is going. So, yeah, I just think they just have to make a decision. I don't see it being made, but that football ultimately, maybe play like Villanova football, right? They're really successful at the level they play at. And they obviously have had a great basketball program during this changing times. Jay Wright and Villanova will manage to stay with it.
Yeah, and look, Villanova football-wise doesn't bring in any money, right? And so that becomes then an issue for Temple. If you're running the athletic department and running the school, then that becomes a source of revenue loss. But I do look at this whole Big Five situation. When you talk about college basketball, it just feels like the Big Five, these teams are dead. Maybe not Villanova, but it feels like these Philly schools, they're just dead in the water here, and there's no path out.
Yeah, it's schools like St. Joe's, LaSalle, Drexel, their chances to have a St. Joe's dream season from 03, 04 again, Jeff, are zero, because they just don't have the money to compete at this point. And frankly, what's going to eventually happen is the big boys, which have taken over football, which is all where the big money is, they're going to come one day and go, wait a second, why do we have a middleman for NCAA basketball? All this money, the NCAA, 95% of their operating budget comes from the television money from the NCAA tournament. And at some point, the athletic directors of the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the ACC are going to say, why are we sharing with these people? Right. We don't need these people. And then you're going to see nothing but the big boys in the tournament. It's not going to be any fun anymore, because you're not going to see these upsets that we love.
Yeah, no Cinderellas, right?
Yeah, they're gone. But I think that's where we're headed. And that's why the St. Joe season has been so spectacular with Steve Donahue, to see that it can happen, but only at that level. You're not going to be able to play with the heavyweights anymore. Like, again, I remember, I covered that St. Joe's team in 03, 04, and people said, well, why is this such a big deal? It's just because it's never going to happen again. That's why it was so cool. It was such an outlier for a school like that to have 2 number 1 draft picks and to go 27-0 in the regular.
Yeah, I mean, that was so much fun. And we had Phil Martelli on a few months ago, and we were talking about the landscape and the state of college basketball and things like that. And I'm like, Phil Martelli did an amazing job there at St. Joe's. They don't have a ton of resources. And obviously what's going on this year at St. Joe's, you have to applaud them for being able to do what they've been able to do. And you hope to think, whether they win the A-10 or not, they're playing VCU today in these semifinals. Whether they win this tournament or not, I'd like to think that they would get in as one of these teams to get in. And that would be such a great story to see them. Maybe they can make a little bit of noise there. Maybe Villanova, which hasn't been ranked, can make a little bit of noise and go, all right, finally, some Philly basketball schools doing some noise in the big dance.
Yeah, just for the record, Jeff, the only way St. Joe's is going to get in is to win today and then.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then win Sunday. Yeah, they just don't have enough of a resume. In fact, there was a point in the season they were 0-2 in the Atlantic 10 and under 500. They've just had a great couple of months.
So you're saying their 22-10 record won't be good enough?
No, it won't even be close. They're not in the ballpark because they didn't do much in the non-conference. But the reality is they're a way better team now than they were in November and December. But unfortunately, the way they look at it, the committee, it's about everything that you did from November 1st through the middle of March. But you know what? They're about a 6-point underdog today against VCU. So it's a winnable game, and then it'll be St. Louis or Dayton tomorrow in Pittsburgh. So they're playing as well as anybody in the league. So they can win their way in. That's the cool thing about these conference tournaments.
Yeah, and obviously when you look at the NCAA tournament as a whole, when you look at what's coming up here as we're about to get started with the March Madness, which number one seeds do you think are the most vulnerable right now? And some teams that are maybe under the radar that you could see making just a big splash and a big run here?
Yeah, this is going to sound a little crazy, but the answer is probably Michigan, and they have been a dominating team most of the year. They haven't quite played at that level now for the last month or so. Their problem, Jeff, is that they are just an average three-point shooting team, and they can have games where they shoot 3 for 17 from three. That's the kind of thing, if it happens to you in the tournament, you're out. Their front court is as good as anybody's. I mean, it's like an NBA front court. It's ridiculous. But their backcourt, while good, is not great. So to me, of the number ones, they have some vulnerability. Would I be surprised if they make the Final Four? Not at all. But of the potential four, and I would include Florida, Arizona clearly is part of that mix. I think they're UConn possibly, and Duke obviously. I think they're the most vulnerable of that group.
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, Michigan's had a tremendous season. Obviously Duke, obviously Arizona. When you look at where they all stand, which Philly schools? I mean, let's say St. Joe's does get in. Let's say Villanova obviously gets in.
Yep.
Could you see these two schools making one of these so-called mini Cinderella runs?
I don't see it, but you know what, Jeff? What I don't know is the matchups, right? This is all about the tournament's all about matchups. Who are you playing? What kind of style is that? Where is the game? All this stuff we're going to find out tomorrow afternoon. I don't see, like, Villanova to me has overachieved with their talent. I mean, if you think back to the Jay Wright teams, we're watching all these guys still in the NBA. Right from the 2018 national champions. There's no NBA players on this Villanova team. So that's what they're going to be up against. But look, they've had a terrific year, and there's no downside to anything that happens to them because after 3 years of not being in the tournament, the fact that they're in and they're getting some good recruits. And look, they want to win in basketball, and they have the money to go get players.
Yeah, it is interesting because when I do think about the Villanova players in the NBA and the runs that Jay Wright made, and I was there covering those Final Fours and covering those runs and the parades, and it was amazing. It was awesome. But in my opinion, the players that Jay Wright had, they weren't these, in my eyes, these blue chip type players. I mean, remember, like Jalen Brunson was taken in the second round, right? I mean, he's emerged as this star in the NBA, starting in Dallas and then really has emerged with the Knicks. I mean, they didn't have these, so-called like top NBA draft picks. They're more of, my opinion, your second tier guys. And what Jay did and built them up, and the work ethic these kids had has been tremendous. They weren't bringing in like the Duke players and things of that nature.
No, that's right, Jeff. It's interesting. When you think back to the recruiting, Jalen Brunson was the only super highly rated recruit.
And he almost went to Temple, right? I mean, it was
close.
Was going to go to Temple.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. His dad was going to come
to
something,
right.
And that all fell through. So Jalen Brunson was only the super high profile recruit. Bridges was barely a recruit. He actually redshirted. That's not even the term that exists anymore. Josh Hart, solid recruit. Dante DiVincenzo was pretty well thought of. But these players, what they did was just develop over time and get better and better and better. And I think Mikal Bridges is the highest drafted of any of those players. And of course, people in Philadelphia remember who drafted him and what happened drafting him.
I will never, and this is why the NBA setup is the worst. And so for years, I cover the NBA draft. And I remember literally standing there with Mikal Bridges in New York when all this is going down and the kids lost. And the setup in the NBA, the way they have the league year and when you can make trades, it creates an issue for these guys and their families where you don't have that in the NFL. Like, you don't have this in the NFL. And it's a huge issue. And I don't really feel bad for professional athletes and stuff like that, and the money they make and everything else and their life-changing lifestyle. I don't feel bad, but in those moments, like Mikal Bridges is traded and he finds out in a weird way. I'm literally standing there with him. He finds out in a weird way. He's like, wait, what? What happened? And his mom was like one of the HR directors for the Sixers at the time. And then you trade him away. Like, what are you doing? And by the way, awful trade, complete disaster, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jeff. I remember that night, and the Sixers were still in the middle of that rebuild madness. Thinking, God, they actually made the perfect choice. Here's a
Perfect.
Here's a 3-and-D 3-man local guy. His mom works for the team, and an hour later, he's traded to Phoenix for a player who never made the NBA and a number 1 draft choice. It was just they kept trying to do something like we're going to be good down the road. How about you've got a 15-year NBA guy who's never missed a game, who's just a great team player, doesn't, great 3-point shooter, free throw shooter, will guard the other team's best player. I mean, think about if they had had him all this time. And they've never had a player like him. They've been dying for a player like Mikal Bridges, and they actually had him for now.
Right. And, like not to go down this rabbit hole, but you could have Tatum and you could have Mikal Bridges and, without going down this crazy rabbit hole. But anyway, any event, Dick Gerardi, great insight on March Madness and everything going on with college basketball, and hopefully you're wrong about the Big Five, and hopefully I'm wrong about the Big Five, and somehow, some way it changes, because I grew up with great games at the Palestra, and it just feels like those days are long gone. But Dick, we appreciate your time. Great insight here on Bet Park Saturday.
You got it. Thanks so much, Jeff.
All right, the great Dick Gerardi, great expert on college basketball and horse racing, spent decades as a sports writer here in Philadelphia. All right, so we're here on Bet Park Saturday. We've talked a lot about the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's get back to the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, they have yet to make a giant splash, and look, this is Howie Roseman's MO right now, that they're not going to go overpay for a free agent. And there really hasn't been one out there. This class isn't ridiculous where you want to go overpay. They made the right move on Jalen Phillips, not overpaying him. Go to Carolina. You enjoy all that money. But Howie Roseman hasn't taken a big swing yet. Will he? Could they land a Max Crosby? Could A.J. Brown be traded? Of course. But a typical Howie Roseman move this week was signing Riq Woolen, bringing him over from Seattle, high risk. How do I put this? So this guy, the ceiling is high. It's a low risk, high reward. That's what I'm looking for. Low risk, high reward in Riq Woolen, coming over from Seattle, former Pro Bowler. Obviously, the taunting issues is problematic, but that's something that's fixable. And we talked about this with Barrett Brooks, who's on the show at the top of the show at noon, that Howie Roseman looks at Riq Woolen. He sees a 6'4" corner, track speed, proven track record. He's a ball hawk in the NFL, and you play him. You don't need him to be your star because you have Cooper DeJean, you have Quinyon Mitchell. You don't need Riq Woolen to be your star. This is a perfect fit. And you look at the opposing quarterback now. Where are they going to throw? And so I think if he can lose the bonehead penalties and the emotional mistakes, something that he says that, he said all the right things in his press conference, but I think this could be a really, really good move for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I wanted you to hear some insight from Riq Woolen about kind of the guy he is, the man he is, and what his expectations are to play here in Philadelphia with Q, with Coop. And really, if he can cut down on those penalties, I think this could be a grand slam signing here and a typical Howie Roseman move. Here's Riq Woolen.
A great chance to play with a great team. A lot of similarities that I have with the Seahawks. Great defensive line, great linebackers. There's all around great culture and great team and organization. You got Q, you got Coop, and with me being able to join those guys, I know that we can be able to play different types of looks. And I felt like that's kind of the same way in Seattle. We had Spoon, we had Nick, and we would be able to play different ways. So to be able to be along those guys and to play with a great front with Carter and JD and, some great linebacker plays, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Do you know Q or Coop at all?
I met Q before he got drafted. He trained at XPE in Florida. That's where I was training at. And I met him a little bit. But other than that, we're going to get close, as the season comes. I watched a couple games, and the one game I liked the most out of what y'all call Guantanamo Bay, the one game I like watching was the Bucks game. when y'all went to Tampa Bay, and we had to go play the Bucks a couple weeks after that. So when I watched that game, and I just seen the way him and Coop were tackling, they were covering, they were strapping guys up. It was pretty cool to see, and now I'm able to be a part of that. It's awesome because it's like, dang, where can you throw the ball to? So it's fun, and to be able to be paired with those guys, I feel like it's gonna be a lot of chances for us to make plays and a lot of chance to help out the defense as well. Just with enthusiasm, I like to go out there, have swagger. I gotta have passion. God didn't make me to be a quiet person. God made me to go show off my abilities and play with passion and enthusiasm. And to fit in a culture where a lot of players do play with passion and enthusiasm is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, honestly, it's a blessing, man. Coach Hurt, real nice dude, and Coach Roy, real nice dude as well. And, I'm just honored to be able to, link up with those guys again. And I feel like being on this team, on a winning team, is going to be a lot of fun to pair with them. Take it a day at a time, man, and just be where your feet at. Just be a great teammate and come every day to work and just try to get better every day. Especially in Seattle, we got a championship culture just like here. It's a championship team. So these guys here, they expect me to come here and work hard, and this team, they work hard too. So I feel like I'll blend right in with them. Whenever you win a Super Bowl, whenever you play with a winning team, other teams, when it comes to free agency, they want a guy that's a winner. They want a guy that can bring a piece of DNA or knowledge on how to be able to win. And for a team that's already winning, and you add a guy that can bring in an extra addition, is going to, bring the team to another level. I'm a sticky guy in coverage. This team runs a lot of man, and they run a lot of everything, but they run a lot of man. I feel like in those situations, I can be able to, take chances just because I have abilities that some people don't. It's just crazy because at the end of the day, you still going to play football. No matter if it's 1 year or 4 years, you still going to have to put your shoulder pads on. You still going to have to play for your team, and you still have to make plays for your team. So literally, I just see it as a year to grow, to come and join this team, to go win a championship, to win games, and to become a brother. And if these guys need me, I'll be there for them. And if I need them, they should be there for me, So I'm just coming here, be a great teammate, a great addition, and help this team win games and hopefully go to a championship. The mental game a little bit. I sometimes be in my head a little bit, but at the same time, I like to show a lot of passion when I play, and sometimes I can get out of control a little bit, OD it a little bit, but most of the time, I just feel like I'm just being a great player, and whenever you make plays, you just gotta lock in a little more and just focus and celebrate with your teammates a little bit. So I just have to say, like, the mental game. It's crazy because ever since my rookie year, I've gotten better every year. And tackling is one of the main things. And I feel like I got better at tackling every year. And just me being comfortable in zone coverage. I had the most busts I ever did when I was a rookie. And those went away as years came. So just continue to be great in zone, continue to be great in the mental point of the game, and continue to be a great tackler. Once you make the play, just turn to your sideline and go over there. You can never go wrong if you celebrate with your teammates. You can never go wrong if you just get to your sideline to make a play, because those are guys you want to celebrate with anyway. Whenever you're going against a team, make a big play, there's a lot of emotions going on, especially a rival game, but you just got to be better in those situations, and you just got to go celebrate with your team, because ultimately that's who you winning the game with. A point where I'll make a play at practice or something and wouldn't celebrate. But, they're like, no, you got to celebrate every play, bro, because, God didn't make you a way to not celebrate. God made me and gave me many different talents, and he made me big and fast and to make plays. And if I didn't celebrate any play, I'll be doing a discredit to myself just because I was made to go make these plays. I was made to show love and show an appreciation to this game, because this game showed an appreciation and love to me. I didn't even want to play corner, to be honest. I was a receiver my whole life. I played offense my whole life. And then my coach was like, hey, you should play corner. And we got to practice, and I was like, nah. But then he tapped me and was like, go play corner. So I was going to do DB drills. And I did DB drills, and I would see all these DBs. They'd be like 5'10" and 5'11", and they pedaling, moving quick. And I'm looking at myself like, oh, no, I don't fit in here. So I would go to the receiver drills, and he'll keep forcing me to go to corner. And then finally I just bought in. And then it was in 2019, the last game of the season. I played my first game of corner, and I didn't know anything. I just was playing cover 1 and cover 3. And I just bail in cover 3, and then if it was man, I just go with my dude. And that was just like the beginning of my journey of just transitioning to the cornerback position. And then in college in 2020, when I got new coaches, they asked me, do I want to play corner or receiver? I just chose to play corner, and then I just bought into the position, and it got me here now. And it helped me a little bit understanding the game because I played both sides just because, when you see a certain receiver split, they can be running certain routes. And when I was a receiver and I was at a certain split, I knew I was running a certain route. So those go hand in hand with some of the things like that.
I got to tell you, I like the guy. I like listening to him. I think he has that Philly edge. He has what you want. And I think with his talent and his height, he's 6'4". He could be a stud. And you cut down on those so-called dumb, taunting penalties. This guy could be a home run signing for little money, relatively speaking. I think this could be a brilliant move to help that secondary. And of course, you still need a safety. It's early in this offseason. And obviously they'll address it, you think in the draft or at another point with a trade, things like that. So it is Bet Park Saturday. Championship week continues for men's college basketball with conference championships with games from 11:30 a.m. this morning until late this evening. Big East, Big 12, ACC, Atlantic 10 tournament, the SEC, and the American Conference among the conference championships playing today. Penn plus 2.5 playing Harvard. St. Joe's plus 6.5 playing VCU in the Atlantic 10 tournament. It is time to play for yourself. Make your downtime fun time. The online casino and sportsbook app, Bet Parks. Check it out, where there's always another way to win. Right now, new casino users get 250 bonus spins on the hot online slot game, Gold Trip Leprechauns. That is Gold Trio Leprechauns Luck. Let's get that right. Plus, up to $1,000 bonus back in their first 24 hours. There is that promotion there. Real casino games for real money, like slots, like blackjack, like craps, you name it. Your favorite sports are on your phone right now. You can make very easy bets on the Bet Parks app. Bet Pro and college hoops, hockey, MMA, golf, world soccer, and much more. The Bet Parks online casino and sportsbook app, where there's always another way to win. You must be 21 years old in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Michigan, or Maryland. New users only. TCs apply. See site for details. Casino bonus must be wagered. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. We've talked a lot about the Birds. We're going to start there. We're going to end there. The Eagles, as we've said, have not made a big splash to start free agency. Howie Roseman's been crystal clear about it. Is not expected to. Could something happen with a trade or something happen, of course. But I really do think the big names, there's not a big free agent class here, and you're not going to give Jalen Phillips that money. I'm fine with it. No big deal. But they haven't made a big splash. You have the A.J. Brown thing lingering. What's going to happen there? What's going to happen with Sean Mannion and this offense and everything surrounding this team? Remember, the NFL draft, what are we, 6 weeks away from the NFL draft? Obviously, a lot of things are going to get addressed there. Is A.J. Brown going to be on this football team? Do you go draft another receiver with Dotson leaving? Do you draft a safety with Reed Blankenship gone? If they stick to their board, maybe you don't get those positions. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the draft, what their biggest needs are, how this team will come together after a disappointing season, and now with a new offensive coordinator and a new look. Among the best beat writers on the beat on the planet, ESPN's Tim McManus. So I caught up with him yesterday to talk about everything Eagles and what's going on with the A.J. Brown situation, his feel on the situation. And I got to tell you, Tim McManus and I disagree on this, on how things are going to proceed with A.J. Brown. So listen to Tim McManus. Great insight about the Philadelphia Eagles and everything going on with the Birds. Take a listen to our conversation. ESPN's Tim McManus. What's happening?
What's up, Jeff? Good to see you, man. Good to be with you.
Busy time of the year. Of course, the Eagles have not made that big splash, at least yet. This time last year was kind of rinse and repeat, right? They had not made a big splash this time last year, but they were coming off the Super Bowl. What do you think the concern level should be for Eagles fans right now? Because they haven't made a big splash and they're coming off, for what is expected was a disappointing season.
Yeah, well, one, I think that Howie Roseman has kind of earned trust over time. He's pretty good at constructing a roster. And so I think that, and he will always bring up the fact that, he's going to build not just in the immediate free agency period, but all the way through the calendar year. And there's plenty of opportunities for him to do so. This is not a finished product. That being said, it hasn't been the splashiest of starts to the new league year. And you've seen a lot of key departures, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And all of them make a lot of sense. Like if you look at Nakobe Dean, they already had Jahad Campbell in place. Jalen Phillips, that money just got a little bit too crazy. Reed Blankenship, they don't usually pay big money to the safety spot. And so you get all of that individually. But when you put it together, you're talking about some serious production from some key players who helped build up this defense in different respects over the course of the last 2 years. And so very much still a work in progress. I don't know that I would feel great about the team if they were to take the field right now, but Howie still has some time here to cook.
Where do you think things stand right now with the A.J. Brown saga? It seems like there's a different report on a different day, and obviously things can change on a dime, but what is your feeling with A.J. Brown right now? Do you think he's a Philadelphia Eagle next season, or do you think he's gone?
I'm leaning towards him being gone. And, there's been sort of this drumbeat leading towards what feels like is going to be a conclusion. And you heard the wording from Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman talking about this, being like, we're in the business of keeping good players, not getting rid of them, but also when they had opportunities to definitively say, so he's going to be on your roster. They're like, well, we didn't say all that. So,
but are we reading into that too much? I mean, because at the end of the day, they're not a better football team without A.J. Brown, unless, they bring back like a Max Crosby or something like that.
Right. But I feel like we've been around it long enough to know that when a team wants to squash something or a player wants to squash something, they can do so pretty effectively. And that has not happened. Instead, what is happening as we go further on in the offseason, to me, it feels like more of a buildup rather than, a diffusing of the situation and he's here and that's that. There continues to be rumblings. You ask around the league about it. Someone that I talked to that has in the league that has ties to the Eagles, the way that he put it is, I think they just want to be done with the drama. And on Brown's side, he has shown different levels of discontent over the last 2 years about the state of the offense, his frustrations in it, the cryptic tweets, the talks at his locker. So it feels like this could be a situation where you're right. I mean, the Eagles are flat out better having A.J. Brown on the roster than not, but it seems like it's starting to come to a point where maybe they look at it, and if they don't feel like it can be done harmoniously, that they have to find a way to part ways.
You have a really good feel for the situation, being in the locker room every single day. It doesn't feel as toxic as the Terrell Owens situation, that whole T.O., Donovan McNabb, and Joe Banner drama from decades ago. It doesn't feel as that toxic and that crazy. The Eagles have this window, though, right now where you go, okay, well, you could trade them maybe for draft picks, but are you going to get a stud in return that's going to be able to help this offense? You have a window, and if you waste that window on this here and there, you could be in big trouble, and it could be gone just like that. You know how quickly windows open and close in the NFL. Again, the Eagles are a better team with him. Do you think it's a situation that they could just fix where you go, okay, he wasn't wrong with anything he said. Should he have said it? Should he have put it out there? Probably not. But do you think it could be a situation where it could just be put to rest and Sean Mannion comes in and they figure this thing out?
Well, Roseman isn't just going to give Brown away, and the price has to be right. And so we'll see what the market ends up bearing for Brown, and that will help determine whether they bring him back or not. And I agree, it's not a T.O. situation. Brown is revered inside that locker room. He's got a lot of friends, and some of the frustrations that he has shared, it's not just like he's the only person feeling those frustrations, but he feels as a captain that it's his responsibility to voice these things so that they can then get fixed and you can go on about your business. It worked really well in 24. He put light on the passing game in 24. It ended up getting fixed and they win the Super Bowl. Last year, it had a little bit of a different sense. So, are the ingredients there to make it work? I guess you could say that, but just right now, if I'm if we have the scales here, I'm leaning more towards him being gone than coming back.
It's interesting because I'm under the impression that I don't think they move him, or they listen and talk to everybody. And I go, okay, did the Eagles make a phone call on Max Crosby? Of course they did. Like, if the Eagles, they were trying to get Micah Parsons a year. Like, Howie Roseman has said it time and time again, they're in on everything. They listen to everything. And so, but I do think, and I do believe them, maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm wrong, but I do believe that it's just, yeah, we'll listen to anything just to see what comes up. At the same time, you could go, okay, well, they're playing a game of chess and going, like, yeah, we don't get rid of great players. We're about keeping great players, but you never know. We'll listen. And maybe they're trying to pump them up at the combine. And to your point, maybe this is just the way Howie Roseman does business. But I just don't think at the end of the day he's moved. I could be 100% wrong. I think he stays. I think they're better with him, and they have this window.
I think a lot of people would be very happy if it ends up being the case. But I do think that Roseman obviously is very good at his job. And the way that he's positioned this, being like it's going to take a ton in order for us to move off of Brown, is good posture. And it also makes sense because they don't need to rush this, Jeff. I mean, if you look at it, you don't need to get it done at the start of the league year. You don't need to get it done at the draft. In fact, it's financially beneficial for them to wait after June 1st to make this trade because of the dead cap hit. So if they trade him pre-June 1, all the cap money accelerates into this year. So you're talking about north of $40 million that the Eagles would have to deal with in terms of a cap hit if it's before June 1st. After June 1st, that gets spread out over the course of 2 years. So now you're talking about just a $20 million cap hit. So if you're like the capologists of the world will look at this and be like, yeah, it actually makes a whole lot more sense for them to sort of play the long game. And they have to weigh that against, well, we need to figure out like who's going to be on this roster and who's not going to be on this roster so we can make some subsequent moves here. So those are the two kind of forces I would say at play here when it comes to Brown.
Yeah, and it seems like Dallas Goedert's fate is kind of tied to this. Where do you think things go with Dallas Goedert? Obviously, if he's gone, they have a huge hole at tight end. What do you think happens there?
I think he ends up coming back. I mean, the way that his situation,
that's interesting because he felt gone last year.
They're looking to see what they could get for him, and he ended up coming back on a reduced 1-year contract, and so that usually signals, okay, the next year, he's out of there. But there is this kind of interesting clause in the way that they structured his contract, where they would take on, again, going back to the cap hit, like a pretty significant cap hit if he ends up moving on. So they are incentivized in a way to bring him back. Plus, the tight end market isn't really that robust. And from my understanding, Jeff, is that Goedert wants to be here. And so you put those kind of things together and feels like you could have another reunion between the Eagles and Goedert.
You wrote this great story last season about the Vic Fangio Meatball Award. And it was fascinating. It was great. And it got a lot of traction. A lot of people were interested in it. But if Vic Fangio, he's going to have no more meatballs to make because he's having all of his players just gone. They're all out the window. Defense that is just getting really decimated through free agency. How much of a concern do you think it is for Vic Fangio, for the Eagles defense, to have everyone just really all their stars just kind of get, taken away?
So it reminds me a little bit of after the 22 season. Of course, they go to the Super Bowl. Then they end up losing some key free agents. Javon Hargrave ended up leaving, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, T.J. Edwards. And it was similar in the fact of you could kind of rationalize it all. Same type of deal. Like, they're getting big contracts elsewhere. They don't spend big money at the safety position. And I remember having this conversation with Darius Slay after a loss to the Cowboys in Dallas.
Slay.
Oh, my bad. Slay, you're right. He would correct me very quickly there. In 23, after the defense had a rough go. And my question to him was, this defense is pretty much the same. Like, why do you think there's been such drastic difference in results? And he's like, actually, the losses that we had, in free agency were pretty significant. And that rang in my ears that year. And as I'm looking at these losses, it's ringing kind of familiar. Again, Howie has plenty of room to operate here. Not to say that he's done, but the losses are outgaining the gains at this point. And so, I don't think that Fangio, at least on paper right now, has the same type of personnel that he's enjoyed over the last year or two.
Yeah, certainly so. And look, Josh Sweat had a nice year last year for the Cardinals, and Milton Williams had a great year for the Patriots. But individually, okay, like, can you really afford to pay those guys that kind of money? The answer is no. And the same becomes with Jalen Phillips this year. Phillips obviously is probably the guy they wanted back maybe the most, it felt like. But
Agreed.
that money that he gets from Carolina just seemed insane. But at the end of the day, I look at Phillips and go, okay, it's a loss, and he was great when he came over here, but you can fill that. I believe you can find a way to fill that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, so they bring in Ebiketie, to pair alongside Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith, and that's
Big
a
upside.
start.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's had 2 6-sack seasons over the course of his young career, and there's some upside there. And I think that there is the way that he plays the game, I think, will fit well in what Vic Fangio likes to do, but it still feels incomplete to me. If you're looking at that roster, especially, we know how much the Eagles prioritize having a good pass rush, and it feels light right now. They were going to give significant money to Jalen Phillips. It just turned out that, somebody else was willing to give more. So there's some money to be dispersed at the pass rush position from where I sit. So I think that there's at least one more move in the front office's bag here when it comes to the edge position.
Yeah, and Reek Woolen bringing in him from Seattle, the free agent from the Seahawks, wins a Super Bowl last year. That feels like a Howie Roseman move as well. Big upside, former Pro Bowler. Of course, there's some negatives with all the taunting penalties and things of that nature, but that feels like a Howie Roseman move that is really going to help the secondary.
Yeah, I liked the quote that Woolen had at his introductory press conference on Thursday, where he's like, you have Quinion and you have Coop and you have Mays. Like, where are they going to throw the ball to?
Right.
It's on paper, the level of talent there between the three of them is about as good of a cornerback trio as you can get. And Woolen is 6'4". So I went and actually asked ESPN to do research on that. It hasn't been since like the early 70s.
Oh, wow.
Since the Eagles had a starting corner that was 6'4". So, he's got that rare size, and he also ran a 4.26 at the combine. So you're talking about a very rare blend of size and speed and Woolen. And that has shown up in like his rookie year. He leads the league in interceptions with 6. He's got over 50 passes defensed in 4 seasons in the NFL. Tremendous talent, but there are those kind of dips where it's like the untimely penalties, blown assignments, things that made Seattle decide ultimately to part ways with him and not give him a big free agent contract. So he comes here to Philly under one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL, paired with 2 of the best fellow corners in the NFL. It's a great opportunity for him on a 1-year deal. And of course, those 1-year deals motivate you. So you're going to be locked in. The upside here is pretty tremendous with that 3.
Yeah. Do you think the concern with the history of the taunting penalties and things like that, and those so-called, dumb penalties, how much of a concern would you be with that? Obviously, he said all the right things in that press conference about, what he needs to do and celebrate with his sideline and not others. But I mean, that nearly cost the Seahawks tremendously in the playoffs. I mean, they were close to, not being Super Bowl champions because of it.
Third quarter, third down, and he comes up with a pass defense on Puka Nacua, and then he goes to the sideline of the Rams and he taunts them and he gets the flag. They stay on the field, and then the very next play, Woolen gets beat by Nacua for a touchdown that brings the Rams within 4. It got dicey, and it got dicey because of that sequence. That's the one thing that you have to ensure does not stay. If you remove that kind of stuff, then it's going to be it can be a home run signing with Woolen. But he has shown to this point that has been sort of part of his game, and that's going to have to get out of there. And Vic Fangio, like, a core philosophy of his is not giving up the explosive play. And Woolen has been sort of vulnerable to those. And so it's not a slam dunk that this is like a perfect marriage. And we've seen Fangio, it doesn't matter if it's a big signing, like think of Bryce Huff or whoever you want. Like, if he's not fitting what Fangio requires, then that person is not going to see the field. So it's not like this is absolutely going to work. It's really more of a boom or bust signing, where if he does get rid of the penalty stuff, If he does get rid of giving up those explosive plays, then you're talking about a huge ceiling. And if he can't, then all of a sudden you start to realize the floor a little bit more.
Yeah, I saw Fangio the other night at an event, and I was talking about it with him, and he was kind of like, yeah, we'll see. And he's kind of like that with everybody. To your point, like, he doesn't care first round pick, who you are, $100 million. He doesn't care. Do you earn the playing time? Can you get the job done, day in and day out? So, and I love that. He's a perfect fit for, Philadelphia. He feels like, the modern day Jim Johnson in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And he's just like, the honesty is so refreshing. He just comes
Right.
out and says, Jahad Campbell's not going to be ready. He's going to miss most of the offseason. Like
Right.
he'll say those kind of things. And he's very blunt when it comes to his evaluation of players, even publicly. And he hasn't shied away before, but like, this person's just not there yet. Like he's not going to see the field. So I'm really curious to see the mix of Rick Woolen and Vic Fangio. Like what is that going to look like?
Right.
That's very interesting subplot to this upcoming season.
What do you think the biggest need is for this team? I mean, is it offensive line help? Is it just simply a health issue there to get the offense rolling? I mean, you could make the case that if that offensive line was healthy, they would have had a way better season than they did, and that offense would have been rolling more. And I do go, if the Eagles don't make any other move, would I be, 100% on board with what they did this offseason? No. At the same time, they're going to pick up guys in the draft. And if the offensive line is healthy, even with A.J. Brown, they're a better offense to me, assuming Sean Mannion, works out.
Yeah, but that's a big under construction thing going on. Like you got to hang the sign on that offense. And Jalen Hurts has talked about before how many different offensive coordinators and play callers he's had.
He talked about it a lot this year. Like,
yeah,
I heard
I
him,
mean,
talk
that's
about
something that he really emphasizes, and he's talked about wanting to have that level of consistency. He said it was the word like pining for it, or someone there. Like he's made it very clear what he wants. This is going to be a pretty far departure from anything that he's seen to this point. Even though there were different offensive coordinators and different play callers under Nick Sirianni, it still had the same sort of DNA in terms of offensive structure. And this is going to be different. The way that the offensive line is going to be asked to block and the type of running scheme that they're going to deploy is different than what they've been doing under Nick Sirianni for the last handful of years. There's going to be a lot more motion. There's going to be a lot more under center. And so this is going to be a learning curve for everybody. And that obviously includes the quarterback, who's going to have to, undergo probably the most serious offensive transition that he's had in the pros to this point. And so I think on one hand, you look at it and say, that's great. Like everybody recognizes that you needed to add some juice to this scheme, that it was getting kind of stagnant. It was getting predictable. And so you have to, you got to rev it up. The flip side of that is when you install a new scheme, it usually takes a while until people feel comfortable with it and the offense gets up and running. So, it's sort of a tug of war between those two things.
Yeah. And obviously then you go, okay, we would expect the starters not to play in the preseason, barring a major change in philosophy from Nick Sirianni. And then you go, how much patience do you have, especially coming off last year? I mean, I just remember this past season, they win a Super Bowl. And everyone in the stands, as the season gets off to the slow start and the offense is just struggling, everyone's upset. People are booing. I'm going, we just won a Super Bowl here in Philadelphia. What else? Like, can we just relax a second? But this city, the fan base, there is no patience. And you go, okay, then if it does get off to a slow start because of everything you just mentioned, are people calling for Jalen Hurts' head? Are they calling for Nick Sirianni's head? Does it create unnecessary drama in a city that already has plenty of it?
Well, you can picture this scenario pretty easily. The Eagles get off to a slow start. A.J. Brown has been traded. The offense doesn't look good. The defense is leaking a little bit more oil because, they lost some key players. And what the mood in the city would be like in that circumstance. And there would be a lot of people to point to, the front office got rid of AJ. Nick is, another disappointment last year in the playoffs, coming off the Super Bowl. And now it's looking bad again. The quarterback, the passing game hasn't been right in a few years. And it looks like it's still struggling a little bit here. So, yeah, I think that they are in a very interesting spot in the 2026 season. It's a very real possibility that they start off with some stumbles as they get their feet under them offensively. And we know in Philly, even if they have been in a Super Bowl 2 times over the last few years, there's just not that much leeway that's given in this town. So it creates a really fascinating dynamic.
Yeah, and so I'll end with this. Could you see a scenario with Jalen Hurts where it's a Carson Wentz 2.0, or do you think he has done enough to this point? He had an okay season last year, had a good season, not, obviously a Super Bowl MVP type season. Do you see a scenario where they would think about going in another direction, or do you think that that is just a crazy premise?
I think that conversation would intensify if it's a bad year, because they obviously have accomplished so many things with him as the signal caller. Getting into the Super Bowl 2 times, winning it once, and both times he was fabulous in that environment. Going really outdueling Patrick Mahomes. So there's that side of it. The other side of it is, if we're being honest, the passing game the last few years not so good, and they're transitioning into a new offense, and it's really interesting because to this point they have not sort of gone all in on that style of play. There hasn't been a ton of motion. There hasn't been a whole lot of under center and play action off of that. Throws over the middle, and they're going to be changing that. And that it's got to be viewed in some respect as a challenge to the QB of, all right, well, here's what we're introducing, and you gotta roll with it. And if it ends up being a failure, then of course, certainly in this town, there's going to be a lot of talk about surrounding the quarterback, and maybe those talks heat up internally. So I do think that this is a big year for Hurts.
All right, Tim McManus from ESPN. Never a dull moment with the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, that'll do it for us on Bet Park Saturday, live from the Sportsbook at Parks Casino in Bensalem. For my producer, Julia Hoff, I'm your host, Jeff Skversky. A special thanks to all of our guests. We'll see you right back here next Saturday on Bet Park Saturday. Have a great day.
We all silly like the mayor.